Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our video where we're going to go through our favourite carbon plate racing shoes. Now, recently we put up our full list of the best carbon plate running shoes available on the market. 18 shoes in there. The video was incredibly long, a nightmare to edit, but this is going to be a much shorter video where we each just give our top picks. So we've got 6 of the Run Testers in this video just saying what their favourite carbon race shoe is and why. So if you're wondering which shoes we actually choose above all to race in, even though we've got access to all of them, this video will tell you to give you that little bit more carbon content because everyone loves carbon shoes. I love carbon shoes. Okay, let's dive into it. Okay, Kieran's here to talk about his favourite carbon racing shoe, which is, Kieran?
It's going to be the Nike Alphafly Next Percent 2, which I guess now is quite an old one, really, in the lineup of shoes that we've got. But for me, it's sort of still the best race shoe. It took me a while to be converted to the Alphafly from the Vaporfly. I was originally a Vaporfly 2 person when it came to racing marathons. And for this, I guess I'm thinking a lot about kind of marathon racing when I think about the Alphafly 2. And for me, it's just got the good sort of ideal balance of everything you need with a really nice sort of dialed in fit that hugs without being too restrictive. You've got that kind of nice, big, sizable kind of platform of super springy ZoomX foam and the plate working in tandem to deliver, I think, what is by far and above the best kind of efficiency, particularly towards the end of marathons where, you want that little bit of extra in those last 6 miles. When you're looking for something, you need something. If you're wearing the Alphafly, it's kind of always there. I think there's only a few shoes for me that tend to deliver that in the same way. The Alphafly is one of them. I think the Prime X Strung Original was another that did that for me. You could rely on it to give you a bit of extra. I think it's also got a little bit of protection in terms of that kind of big platform of cushioning. So if things are going wrong and it's a bit ragged and you've overcooked it and you're not going to hit the race kind of times that you wanted because you've gone out too fast, you can drop back a little bit on poorer form, back on your heels a bit, and it's got enough there to look after you. It's not going to leave you high and dry, again, like some other kind of firmer or kind of, I think, less cushioned carbon shoes are going to. So things like the Rocket X2, I think, back to the Vaporfly 2, that was a shoe that you had to be running, I think, in good form. And plenty of times I went out and I wasn't towards the end, and the last few miles were a bit of a struggle in terms of foot fatigue and impact coming up through. It just wasn't quite enough. And the Alphafly for me does that whole gamut. I know, Nick, you kind of sort of said you prefer this for the longer distances, and I think you're right. It needs to be, in long sort of straight line city marathons, it absolutely performs best. But it's also a shoe that I can run well over kind of 5 and 10Ks if the course is right, and over a half marathon as well. Once it's on, I feel racy, I feel energetic, I feel lively. I think it's about right in terms of the weight. Durability is pretty good on it for me, and overall it's just a shoe that I'm happy racing in over the marathon distance.
And we're very excited to see what the Alphafly 3 does, because if they can maintain that level of oomph, maybe in a slightly more streamlined model, then that'll be for the better. Next up to pick their favourite carbon shoe, it is Tom, who has gone for, to no one's surprise, the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3.
Yes, obviously. I kind of bored. I did Berlin Marathon in the Pro 3, and last time I'd probably raced in it was Chicago, which was a year ago. So when I was deciding what shoe to pick up, I was like, I don't really want to go for the Pro 3 again. I mean, I've banged on about it so much last year. I was hoping that I had another shoe that I'd use instead, but I just haven't got another shoe that I was doing Berlin. I was going for a PB. I'm gonna pick the shoe that I think is going to do the best job, and it's still this after a year and a half.
Tom, people have been very critical about you being too shy and humble to mention your PB, so mention it again. You've run 2 sub 3s in this shoe, your first and only sub 3s, right?
So I've ran 2 sub 3s in this shoe. I've ran PBs in every distance in the Pro 3, but in Berlin it was 2:53:20, I think.
Nice, very nice. And so it's a more approachable shoe than a lot of carbon shoes. It's a less dramatic ride, but it is still bouncy. It's very fluid with the speed roll rocker. The Power Run PB foam is a PB-based foam, gives you that element of bounce. It's a nice shoe. You can actually use it for easy runs as well. I think it's fair to say it's pretty versatile. They're good for every distance, as Tom has proven. But obviously, the Saucony have released the Endorphin Elite this year with a different foam in there. So that's a more aggressive, shoe all round. But Tom, you still prefer the Pro 3?
I tell you what, I'm really warming to the Elite recently. I didn't really like when we first started testing it. It was a bit too firm for me. It was a bit too aggressive, and I did a couple of races in it, and I just didn't feel comfortable in it. I did the Brighton Half Marathon, and by about 15k, my feet were just hurting because they were sort of forced into a position which I don't get from the Pro 3. The Pro 3 just feels like a very traditional feeling shoe that does have the bounce and the propulsion in it and the turnover. But since I was testing the Elite at the start, I've been using it quite a bit for park runs and things, and it does seem to have softened up a bit. And I'm actually warming to the Elite quite a bit at the moment. I almost decided to use it for Berlin, but I thought it was still a bit risky because, you know, a half marathon is very different than a full marathon when you're trying to run an aggressive shoe. So the Pro 3 is still my go-to, and I can't wait for them to. Well, I'm slightly worried, slightly scared, but for the Pro 4.
My favourite carbon plated racing shoe is the New Balance Super Comp. It is, I just love it. It's, first off, it's really comfy, which hasn't been my experience of all carbon plated shoes. So it's really comfy. The upper, the under, it's all comfy. We use the term sock-like upper, I think, far too much, but this is definitely a great example of where it should be used. I find the upper really does hug my foot. There's not a huge amount in terms of lacing because you don't need it, and my foot really does feel secure in that upper, and it's just really lush. Underneath, it's lovely, lovely, nice, soft feeling that you want. I run in it for a 5k race and a 10k race, and I'm going to use it in a half marathon this weekend. Really excited to put it on again to race. I've done up to 8 miles in it, like as a tempo run. I'm really excited about doing the half marathon in it. Generally in shoes I do prefer like a bigger drop, like 8, even 10 millimeters. This is lower than I usually go for, but I think I don't actually miss those extra couple of millimeters, probably because of that lovely roll. You don't miss that that little bit of gradient. It does give you that propulsive feeling that you want from a carbon plated shoe, but for me the big selling point is that comfort that comes along with that. So for going longer, comfort is a big factor, isn't it? It is for me anyway. That's why it gets my vote.
Hi, I'm Jane. I'm one of the run testers, and this is my top carbon fibre shoe pick for the last few years. The only thing Nick told me is that this shoe had to be in stock, so it was just really tough. But I think right now the shoe that I would buy overall is the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. I love this shoe. It's not the shoe I've got my marathon PB in, but it's a shoe that I would reach for. If you told me I had to go and do a race tomorrow, I would reach for the Next Percent 2. I prefer it to the Next Percent 3. I think it's got a kind of more aggressive rocker, and it just feels snappier underfoot. I think we said in the Next Percent 3 review, Nike have made some changes to the shoe, but it doesn't feel as aggressive. And I think on a race day, you want to feel aggressive. I wore this shoe for the London Marathon I did last October, and I have real memories of kind of running downhill from Greenwich wearing this shoe, feeling really fast. And I think that's what you want on race day. You want to feel fast, and I think you do in this shoe. Of course, there are other carbon fibre shoes on the market I could have picked. The New Balance SC Elite V3 I love, but I think it's just the tried and tested with this shoe. I love it. I've worn it for a few races, and it's just the shoe I reach for if I feel like if I want to run fast in it. I really feel like Nike kind of set the precedent for carbon fibre shoes, and I think this is one of their most impressive. It's definitely more stable than the Alphafly. I've tested the Alphafly, I've done a race in the Alphafly. For me, I'm quite a stompy runner. I'm not a particularly quick runner, and I felt constantly like I was going to twist my ankle. You don't get this in this shoe. You can really trust it, and because the Next Percent 3 has come out, I've had a quick look, and you can get it for about £150, which is really great for a carbon fibre running shoe. So I think it kind of pays here to shop last season. It is still in stock, it's still widely available. It probably won't be in another 6 months' time, but I think right now this is the carbon fibre shoe I reach for, even though there are other newer snazzier, brighter, more glamorous shoes on the market, I really trust this running shoe, and I think it would be the one I would reach for, like I say, if I had to do a race next week. So this is my top carbon fibre running shoe pick right now.
Okay then, Nick, what is your top pick?
Well, thanks for asking, Tom. I probably should mention it, but Tom is visibly very ill in all of these videos we've done. So good, well done to him for getting through it.
We'll do a blooper reel.
Anyway, my pick is the Vaporfly 3, which I think is more or less the best super shoe ever made. The perfect super shoe. The balance of weight, bounce, propulsion, cushioning, aggression, everything is there in this shoe. Like, I love the Vaporfly 2. My marathon PB is still in that shoe, but overall I tended to prefer the Alphafly just because they are a bit bouncier, a bit more cushioned. But the Alphafly 2 got a little bit heavy. I still like it, but as a runner who mostly relies on a fast cadence and a high turnover for my running, that's how I run. I'm not the biggest bounciest runner. I wanted like an Alphafly that was a little bit less heavy and all that, and the Vaporfly 3 sits a little bit in between the Vaporfly 2 and the Alphafly 2 in my opinion. It's much closer to the Vaporfly 2. I mean, there are people who say this shoe has been completely changed. I still think it is very much the Vaporfly with that Zoom X foam, but you've got that lighter design with a little bit less outsole to pack in a bit more Zoom X cushioning, and that is noticeable. I've done a marathon in the shoe and it just feels so much more cushioned at the end of the marathon when running hard for me. The way I snap through off the heels, like I say, high turnover. Eventually I'll get a little bit of forefoot discomfort in the Vaporfly 2. It hasn't happened in the Vaporfly 3 at all. It's really comfortable while still being very light, very fast, very bouncy, and still really aggressive for short distances. Like, I have done a 4.8k race in this shoe as part of a relay, and I was bang on my 5k PB pace, which was in the Vaporfly 2. I think it's a terrific shoe all round. Like, only real fault I have with it is the outsole being so thin at the back. And Tom, you've had problems with this. Like, you've ripped off one of those bits of rubber. It's something that I've seen around in general. Like, I've got a bit of wear there, nothing too bad yet, but that's a risk. It's probably not going to be as durable as previous versions of the Vaporfly, I think it's fair to say, but on performance alone, I can't fault it. It's perfect for every distance for me, and it's my A racer going forward. Where do you land on the Vaporfly 3, Tom, apart from the outsole?
Well, the outsole's quite a big one for me. I destroyed it after one half marathon, but I think I did notice the additional softness from the Vaporfly 3. I'm still on the fence about it, actually. I don't. There's not a massive difference between the 2 and the 3, but I'm not sure I like the added softness. I got quite used. I've used the Vaporfly 2 so many times for races and things that I'm not sure if I actually prefer the Vaporfly 2 to the 3 based on that. Still think it's a great shoe. Still in like my top 3 or 4 shoes. Complete shoes, but yeah, a bit on the fence with versus the Vaporfly 2.
Oh, that I also always want to look out for. I think this is a bit more of almost a throwback to some of the early Vaporflies, where it really was the whole durability thing was very much on the agenda. That is the case with this one. I think the Vaporfly 2 actually was a slightly longer lasting shoe. Even though I love the Vaporfly 3, I will say, if you see the Vaporfly 2 available for 150 quid less, I'd probably pick up the 2. Like I say, my PBs are still in the 2, and it's still a great shoe. So, but yeah, Vaporfly 3, I think a really good update, and I can't really fault it apart from that outsole. All right, next up to deliver his top pick is Mike, who I seconds ago informed could only have one shoe to choose, so he had to very quickly choose. He picked 3, he picked 3 picks, Mike's top picks video. So, Mike, what is your favourite carbon racing shoe?
Well, yeah, after that shock, I mean, I definitely had some front runners, but I think the one I'm going to have to go with is the Nike Vaporfly 3. Now, I haven't run in the first 2, so this is my first experience of this year running in a Vaporfly shoe. You know, I haven't had the best times in terms of injuries and stuff this year, but when I've got kind of fitter again, I went out, I did a kind of 5k race, just went out in that Vaporfly 3. It felt fantastic. I can see why people like this shoe. I love the fact it's nice and light. The upper works for me really nicely. I love the kind of ride that you get from this shoe. It's aggressive, but I didn't find it too aggressive for me. And it, you know, the runs that I have done, it felt fantastic. And I'm looking forward to doing some kind of longer races in this shoe. But the runs that I've done in them this year, it was between this and the Metaspeed Sky Plus. But I think for me, in terms of just what I've had from the Vaporfly 3 in the runs that I've done this year, it's just kind of edged it for me a little bit.
That's fair enough. It's my pick as well. I love the Vaporfly 3. Now, good to talk about that 5k, Mike. Was that the one where you botched the sub 20 by how many seconds?
1 second basically. But I mean, and that's the thing for me. I didn't really know what I had in the locker, but I felt really, really good. And you know, I hadn't raced in the Vaporfly shoe, as I said, and I just felt really good in the shoe. And I can see why people love the shoe. And I've got to experience. I've done some kind of track sessions with it as well. I've started to kind of pick up a bit more mileage in it as well too, now that I can, and I've just enjoyed all the runs that I've done in it. I think you use it in the right way, use it for the right sessions. When it comes to race day, I think you're going to get a really positive experience from it.
Brilliant. So next year, Mikey's marathon, Vaporfly 3, we'll see what we go. Start chasing down those times Tom's setting.